Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your First Alert Avalanche Report. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandri, and joining me is the Deputy Director of the Colorado Avalanche Information Center, Brian Lazar. Brian, it has been another warm week up in the high country. What has that done to our snowpack?
Yeah, it's been really warm, and it's taken quite the toll on our snowpack. Essentially, it's put us, probably a good month ahead of our melt than we would be in a typical year. And these two images will really illustrate that well. When we talked last week, the northern mountains were still sitting in the green or pretty close to long-term median. You can see that the last week of really warm weather has taken the toll even up north, where we sit in kind of the mid 80s of long-term median, and down south it's looking pretty bleak. We're in the 30s to 40 percentiles of long-term median. And it's looking a lot more like mid-May than it does mid-April. You can see if we look at a statewide average SNOTEL graph, this green line is our 30-year long-term median here, and this green star indicates our long-term median peak date. The black line is this year, and you can see we had a little uptick a couple weeks ago. It's got us pretty close to long-term median, but over the last 2 weeks, you can see this precipitous decline due to all those warm temperatures. Makes it incredibly unlikely that this black line gets close to the green or we get back towards long-term median, despite some snow that might be coming this week, which might help ameliorate some of the worst effects of this, really dramatic melt. But it's not going to get us back to normal. And what all those warm temperatures have done over the last week is essentially led to a big uptick, not surprisingly, in wet avalanche activity. This is what's been driving the moderate avalanche danger that we've seen over the last several days or so. And these come in a couple varieties like we've spoken about before. Here's a good image from the Crested Butte Avalanche Center outside of Crested Butte, with an avalanche that started as a loose wet avalanche, ran several dozen feet, and then triggered a wet slab avalanche. And you can see that some of these were going fairly large. Here's one from the San Juans coming out of steep rocky terrain that gouged down towards near the ground and actually even picked up some dirt as it ran downhill. You can see most of these avalanches were small, but some of them did entrain enough, wet surface snow to become dangerous to a person, large enough to bury, potentially injure somebody. And here's a good example of some of this wet avalanche activity from the Indian Peaks Wilderness area. You can see numerous wet, loose avalanches coming out of the steep rocky terrain, and then a loose, wet slab avalanche here in the lower left corner. So that's been driving the avalanche danger over the last week or so, but that is going to change here.
Yeah, today through Saturday, we are expecting a comeback of winter. Snow and colder temperatures in store just in time for the weekend. And in some locations, Brian, we are anticipating about 2 feet of snow. How is this weather whiplash really going to affect avalanche conditions?
Yeah, it is very much whiplash. Mother Nature's not quite ready to let go of winter weather here in Colorado. What the colder temperatures have done has generally given us safe avalanche conditions across most mountain areas, which means most slopes are safe from avalanches because the cooler weather will lead to a cessation of that wet avalanche concern, particularly as we get into Thursday night. So here's a quick snapshot of our homepage on Thursday afternoon, and the cooler temperatures and the wind will put those wet avalanche concerns in the rearview mirror just temporarily. You can see up here north in the Park Range, you've got moderate avalanche danger, but that is not from wet avalanche activity. That is from the new snow that is coming that you just mentioned. And I'll show a modeled version of accumulating snowfall over the state. You can see it starts in the Park Range, but quickly spreads south Thursday night. By the time we get into Saturday, we've got a lot of those red colors showing up on the map. The red is a foot of accumulating storm snow, and you can see some areas are even in this pink. Particularly along the east side of the Continental Divide from about Berthoud Pass north through Rocky Mountain National Park, where we could see as much as 2 feet of storm snow. So this is going to drive an increase in the avalanche danger from all those generally safe green colors I just showed. And we're going to see an uptick in storm snow instabilities. And in places that get more than about 20 inches of snow, we could even see a return of considerable avalanche danger. This new storm snow is going to shed off in avalanches in 2 ways. It's going to come in first in dry sloughs or loose dry avalanches like you can see in this image, sliding on the underlying slick bed surfaces. Those can become large enough, particularly in areas that see more than about 12 or 14 inches of snow. But the more dangerous variety is going to be soft slab avalanches that break into the storm snow. And in places that see more than about 12 or 14 inches, you can see these, widespread storm cloud avalanches. But the most dangerous slopes are going to be at the higher elevations that see the most wind drifted snow, like in this image. So you're going to find the fattest slabs of wind drifted snow up near ridgelines in the near and above tree line elevation band and in cross-loaded gully features. And so these are the kinds of terrain features we're going to watch for, because the slabs could become, 2+ feet thick in these wind drifted slopes, sliding on the underlying bed surfaces. And those are avalanches that could be large enough to bury, injure, or kill a person.
Now, Brian, this storm expected to start to move out Saturday, and then we are expecting another warm-up headed our way in true spring fashion. So Sunday into next week, what are we anticipating conditions will be like as we see these warmer temperatures on top of all this new snow?
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. We're moving into late April. The temperatures get really warm really quick, and the sunshine is quite strong. So you can see here, we're looking at temperatures. You can see those blue colors kind of clip Colorado as the storms roll through on Thursday through Saturday. But by the time we get into Sunday, these brown colors start creeping back into Colorado. This is really warm temperatures, strong April sunshine. All of that cold snow is going to see those warm temperatures and sunshine, and will start to shed off in wet avalanche activity. So Sunday will be a transition day where we've got some cold drifted slopes, at the highest elevations that face the north side or the cooler side of the compass. But by Sunday afternoon, we're going to start to see all this new accumulated snow start to shed off in wet avalanche activity. And that wet avalanche activity is going to continue into early next week. So we're going to see a reprieve from the wet avalanche activity Friday and into Saturday. We're going to be worried about storm snow. By the time we get into the last part of the weekend, Sunday afternoon into Monday and Tuesday, wet avalanche activities back on the radar, and that will drive the avalanche danger.
So with this weather whiplash, Brian, we are going to see a few different things heading into the weekend. What slopes should you avoid first with the new snow, and then what slopes should you avoid next week as we see those temperatures warm up?
Yeah, so as we move into the weekend, it's going to be the wind drifted slope. So this storm is initially coming in with fairly strong west to southwest winds. So the most dangerous slopes are going to be the wind loaded slopes that face north through east through south, particularly near and above tree line. The most dangerous slopes on a micro terrain feature are going to be those wind drifted slopes near ridge lines and in cross loaded gully features. That's going to drive the avalanche danger for at least the next 48 hours. And then again on Sunday, we're looking at wet avalanche activity, which is going to be more widespread across the compass. The danger will first start on low elevation east and south facing slopes, and then move up in elevation into colder aspects as we move into early next week.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Brian. As always, we will see you here next week for your First Alert Avalanche Report.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.